welcome to That's Based. Happy Sunday. I'm your host, as always, Caleb Salvatore, reporting from somewhere underground. We're laughing our way through the end of days, brought to you by Outlaw Streamers and Chris Baker Radio on Live 365. We're doing a bonus show today, and I owe you guys that one. Because the show we did Saturday with Monty Scott, which came out at your normally scheduled time, was a little eclectic, chaotic, if you will. And that was my fault. So let me tell you what happened, because if you listen to that show, I was not myself. I was sluggish. I was struggling to make a point, to land the plane on different things. And here's what happened. No, I wasn't drunk. I wasn't high. I was nothing like that. I wasn't in the middle of a serious medical incident that I had to be rushed to the hospital afterwards, or nothing like that. This is embarrassing. About 3 hours before we went on, I had Chinese food. And I probably had more than I should have, because I finished about half of it, put it in the fridge, and as Chinese food is known to do, I got hungry again, and I finished the rest of it. And I thought I would be fine. I went out and walked the dog, get the digestive train rolling a little bit. And the first half went down fine, but that second half came back to get me. So the entirety of the show with Monty Scott, I'm sitting here, not only because Mia was out, she had some family stuff going on, so she'll be back tomorrow. But throughout the entirety of this show, I'm sitting here talking to Monty, trying to get my points across with a fucking brick in my stomach. Like, it was like I ate a brick. And I was in so much, I almost had Mia take me to the hospital afterwards. Like, I was in that much pain. I almost said, fuck this, let's go to the hospital, something's not right. Now, I didn't. I took some Pepto. I'm telling you right now, when I stood up after recording this show, I couldn't sit back down. I couldn't lay down. I couldn't stand. There was nothing I could do to stay comfortable without being, like, in a tremendous amount of pain. I was like, do I have diverticulitis or is something more serious going on here? So I almost said, take me to the hospital. I'm not doing this, but I gave it an hour and I was fine. So I was not on my game in that show. I was sweating. I was struggling to get through. We cut it short about halfway through. I had 5 more topics I wanted to talk about that we didn't even get to. 6 more, actually. We probably wouldn't have gotten to all of them. It was a good show. With Monty did it. He carried the show, so give it up to him. But had it just been a normal show and I didn't have someone who had taken time out of their schedule to come and do the show, I probably would have postponed it. If it was just Mia and I or just a show with myself, I probably would have postponed it and taped it the next day. I probably wouldn't even have done it. So you're going to get a bonus show because you deserve more from me. You deserve me not to come on the air with some type of weird food poisoning and digestive issues. And you know what? Just because I'm a nice guy and I feel bad, we won't even do ads this show. We won't even do sponsors this show. The Spreaker's going to throw their ads on because we got to get paid. But I won't even do my sponsors. If you want to buy from the sponsors, they're all right down there. Okay? By the way, little self-promo. October 11th, Comedy and Chaos will be back at Beach House, 9 p.m. Roast battles coming to your city. Okay. Excuse me. So we got a lot to talk about in this bonus show in a short, well, it's not a short amount of time. It's my own show. I can do whatever the fuck I want. So let's start off with this first one. The Federal Reserve met last week, and once again, the rates stayed the same. There's no rate cut. Donald Trump has been the biggest cheerleader for a rate cut because he knows he needs one, but they stayed the same. Now, Trump has talked openly about firing Jerome Powell, the chairman of the Federal Reserve. That's a little bit more difficult than Donald Trump is letting on. He can't just go in and fire him. There has to be a resignation or cause, and it's got to go through a whole process. It's not like it's his Secretary of State, where if he pisses him off, he can go just get the hell out of here. The chairman of the Fed serves a term, and there has to be cause to remove him. It's very, very difficult. Now, Powell's got about, I think it's like 7 or 8 months left, so it's not like he's going to be there for much longer. He's just going to continue to be a thorn in Trump's side. But the problem now is when Trump continues to insult this guy publicly, he's not going... Donald Trump wrote The Art of the Deal. He knows how negotiation work, right? Everything's like a poker game. Powell has the upper hand in this situation because because Trump can't just fire him. He can talk about firing him. He can drag his name through the mud, but you're talking about a guy who's in like his 60s or 70s. he's not really worried about finding a viable career after this. He's probably done, right? So he's not, it's not like he's worried about his reputation being tarnished. So now Powell has an incentive to be a dick back to Trump and refuse to cut the rates. The problem with that is a whole lot of people get victimized by that when you do that, is you tank the housing market. Among a number of other things, credit card rates, other loans will go, the interest rates will skyrocket. Now, the Federal Reserve continues, and I was a defender of Jerome Powell under Biden. I said, Powell's going to get a lot of shit. I'm not his biggest fan. I don't agree with everything he said and done. However, the recession we saw under Biden, remember the recession that wasn't a recession because they changed the definition of it, would have been a whole lot worse had Jerome Powell not been the steady hand guiding the economy through that insanity over the last 4 years. It would have been, you would have seen the mass layoffs. You would have seen significant production slowdowns. It didn't happen under Powell, and he should get credit for that. But that doesn't mean what he's doing right now is okay, because what we've seen is they continue to move the goalposts. They tell us we need to get inflation under 3% before we cut the rates. Inflation gets under 3%, and they go, well, we need to see 2/4 of that. Then you see 2/4 of that, and they go, well, we actually need it to be under 2.5%. And then it gets under 2.5%, and they go, well, we overestimated it. We need it to be at 2% and a GDP growth of 3%. So this last quarter, we get inflation at 2%, inflation's below 2%, and GDP growth hits 3%. By the way, the jobs report every single month has come in better than expected. They keep telling us that these tariffs are going to kill the economy, and they haven't done it yet. We haven't seen the layoffs. We haven't seen the inflation spikes. The GDP is growing at a rate that it hasn't in a long time. So what's the holdup? You've got 5 months in a row now. Inflation has gone down. Now, that doesn't mean, for those of you idiots out there, because people don't understand the difference between inflation going down and prices going down. Inflation going down means the prices will not rise at the rate they once were. They still go up, but like I've said a million times till I'm blue in the face on this show, the goal is to get wage growth once again outpacing inflation, which is where we are. Wage growth is about double what inflation is right now in this country in terms of pay raises and promotions. That's the goal. And that's why, I said Donald Trump gave himself an unnecessary Achilles heel by saying he was going to lower prices, because that's an easier talking point than to say we're going to make it so we're going to create an economic environment that fosters growth so that wage growth outpaces inflation. And even though prices are rising, the amount of money you're making is going to go up at twice that rate or 3 times that rate or whatever the case may be. So you're not going to feel the price hikes like you were the last couple of years. That's a harder selling point to the average dumb voter with TikTok brain that can't process anything longer than 7 seconds. I had a video, posted a video on TikTok where some woman replies to it. Of course, it's a woman. And she goes, why do men have to take so long to explain things before they get to the point? This was a 2.5-minute video. A 2.5-minute video. She was complaining that it took too long to get to the point. 2.5 minutes. These people can't focus for 2.5 minutes. You have to be able to deliver a message in under 30 seconds if you want to succeed in this market. It is what it is, and it unfortunately leaves you open for unnecessary criticism like that. But the goalposts have continued to move for as far as what Jerome Powell and the Fed will consider to cut the rates. And that's a problem, because when I look at this, I wonder, has this gone past Jerome Powell? Because he's a human. Yes, he's a professional, and he did a decent job under Biden, but he's still a human being like the rest of us. And us humans, as we all know, this show especially, where we're dedicated to petty beefs and misinformation, humans will go out of their way to spite someone despite it not being for the greater good. Whether it's for their family, for themselves, for their country, humans will self-sabotage if it means they can get back at someone who has made a clown out of them. And Trump has done that. He publicly attacks Powell every chance he gets. And here's the thing. I'm starting to wonder if Powell is going, you know what? You want to publicly criticize me and make an ass out of me every chance you get, every time you're in front of a camera talking about the rates and inflation, if you want to make an ass out of me every chance you get, then fine, I'll tank the housing market. I wonder if, at this point, if this has turned into a pissing contest where Jerome Powell is intentionally sabotaging the economy? Is he trying to kill the housing market and force a recession so that Donald Trump will have egg on his face and he can walk away with the last laugh? I mean, it shows how incredibly petty, and it shows the greater problem with the Federal Reserve. I've been a critic of the Federal Reserve for a long time now, just the concept of it. Don't you think it's a little bit wild that one guy who's not been elected by the people has the power to tank the economy because he doesn't like what the president's saying about him, whether you agree with Trump or not? Don't you think that's a little bit insane? That this is even a possibility? That this guy can tank the housing market and wreck the economy and force a recession and push millions of people out of jobs? Hundreds of thousands of people are going to have to foreclose on their homes. Don't you think that's a little bit wild that he has the ability to do that? That would concern me. And I'm someone that used to defend Powell. So it'll be interesting. I think with these jobs numbers and GDP growth that came out after the Fed, or an inflation rate that came out after the Fed said they were going to cut the rates, I think their hand may be forced. I think they may have to. Or because here's the other thing the Federal Reserve doesn't want. There's a guy named Ron Paul, who's one of my political heroes, that's been screaming for the longest time. He has a son in the Senate named Rand Paul. Ron Paul was a congressman in Texas, was screaming for the longest time, saying, we need to audit the Federal Reserve, we need to audit the Federal Reserve, we need to audit the Federal Reserve. And they'd never let him do it. Well, the Fed obviously doesn't want to be audited. Why they don't want to be audited? Your guess is as good as mine. I have a couple of theories on it. If Powell looks at these numbers, at the GDP rate or growth, at the inflation rate, at the jobs numbers, at the wage growth numbers, if he looks at these numbers and still says, nah, we're not going to cut the rates, what you're going to see are the calls to audit the Federal Reserve are no longer going to be from fringe libertarian circles. They're going to grow. They're going to grow from the right. They're going to grow from the left. They're going to grow from the center. Everyone's going to audit the Fed will go from a talking point of a niche libertarian Republican presidential candidate from 2008 to a mainstream talking point. Quickly, almost overnight. That's going to happen. And the Fed does not want that. They do not want to be audited. That's loud and clear. Because this isn't a partisan issue. Everyone wants the rates to go down. I'm sure there's some Democrat ghouls that want to see Trump fail, so they want him to stay up. Everyone wants the rates to go down. Everyone wants cheaper house loans. Everyone wants cheaper car loans. Everyone wants the rates to go down. If you've got money in bonds, you want the rates to go down. I mean, there's all types of people. This is one of those issues, like property tax relief in Nebraska, which we can never get, that defies partisan lines. Everyone wants it, and he's not giving it to us. He's going to quickly become the most unpopular man in the country, and as we've learned, when someone becomes the most unpopular man in the country, that's not a good position to be in. Ask Donald Trump in summer of 2020 how that feels. Let's go to the next one. We had a couple different instances of violence throughout the country on the East Coast this last week that have made some headlines. And I think it just shows, we say this as conservatives all the time when the left freaks out about a police shooting. We say we need to wait for the facts to come out. And you notice how they don't freak out about police shootings quite as often now that body cameras are there? Because it's a lot harder to sell the innocent victim card to people when you can see the video of a deranged, drug-addicted lunatic charging at the officer with a knife. Well, we as conservatives need to wait for the facts to come out too, because we jump the gun a lot, and we're just as bad as the left is at doing this. And we don't police ourselves. We don't claim responsibility for when we have a bad take like this. So we had two instances that happened of repulsive violence, right? The first instance that happened was you had a guy in Virginia. He's a city councilman. He's a Republican who gets set on fire by somebody at his office earlier on in the week. To my knowledge, he's still alive, serious critical condition, whatever. But he gets set on fire. And you hear Republican elected representative set on fire. I mean, the liberals like their fire. There have been instances like this in the past where they've done it to themselves. Why wouldn't they do it to a sitting city councilman? You know, so everyone's like, oh, great, more political violence from the left, which, by the way, does exist. They are far more violent than we are. But as it turns out, we haven't seen a real motive for this. There's been a lot of speculation. Everyone thinks it's political, which is understandable. But when you look into it a little bit more, when you look at this guy's Instagram account and the timeline of events, this city councilman, you'll see that his wife filed for divorce 2 weeks ago. And when you look at the guy's Instagram account, he has a picture with the wife of the guy who set him on fire. Now, maybe it's a coincidence, and maybe it was political violence, or maybe he was fucking this guy's wife on the side. I had a cop one time tell me that 99% of the violence in this country roots back to drugs, money, and women. Even like mass shootings where mentally ill lunatics walk in and start killing people. Guys that get laid and make money don't do that. So you can still relate it back to money and women. All I'm saying is we got to look at probabilities here. I don't think the fact he was a sitting Republican representative had anything to do with what happened based on the information we have and the odds that violence over a woman is still far more likely than violence over political differences. Again, I don't know anything for certain. I'm not accusing him of fucking anybody. I'm only speculating on what's publicly available and circulating on social media. That's all we know. The timeline looks weird, though. I don't think this is political violence. I also find it weird that I know some of you listening to this are sitting there hoping this was political violence, which is weird on its own to have hopes about violence. Like you hear a mass shooting and people on the left will just, they I don't want to say they pray because they're godless losers, but to whatever it is they believe in, they sit there and just hope that it's a conservative NRA member, and it almost never is. And then on the flip side, conservatives, when you hear about a school shooting, they just sit there and they pray that this guy's transgender. And I think that's weird on both sides. You shouldn't turn tragedies into a way to score points on the other team. I think politics and social media and the internet have devoided a lot of us of souls, and even myself included. I need to take a look at this. There's times I have to take a step back and go, well, you're going into the tribalistic nutcase territory there, Caleb. You got to chill. So we had another shooting where a guy walks in New York City with an AR-15 and goes up to the 33rd floor at the building that happens to be the main office for the NFL and Blackstone. By the way, 33rd is the highest degree for Freemasons. So do with that what you will. He kills 5 people, including himself. Everyone on the internet is spurging out about this. All these, first off, CNN said the guy is possibly white. You look at the image, it's clearly a black guy. Clearly a black guy. And the way he's moving with this AR-15 is bizarre. Strolling in. Just strolling. He's not running. He's got the gun at his side, not pointing it at anybody. Strolls in. He killed a police officer. He killed an executive at Blackstone. And it turned out he was a former football player. And he mentioned he shot himself in the chest so that his brain could be used for research on CTE. And he did it not on the right floor, but at the NFL's corporate headquarters. But if you ask folks on the internet, there's some map circulating around about globalize the Intifada and how this building was one of the supposed targets. So it had to be a Palestine guy or a black nationalist or it wasn't any of that. It wasn't any of that. It was a nutcase who had his brain destroyed by CTE and thought that he was going to go make a point. And that's tragic. It's tragic for the people that got shot. It's tragic that happened to him and he didn't have the resources or whatever to get help. It's tragic that they didn't take brain injuries seriously when people, I think this guy's like close to my age, when people our age were playing football. Everything about it's tragic, but it's not political at all. It was a broken man. It was a broken man who saw the way that you guys turned Luigi Mangione into a rock star for going out and shooting a CEO that he felt had wronged him, even though it was, I don't even think it was his health insurance company. And this is what happens. This is what happens when we do that. When we memorialize mass shooters, when we memorialize murderers, when we put the Boston bomber on the cover of Rolling Stone, this is what happens. You create this environment where a guy who, it would have been tragic had he just shot himself in his basement and said, donate my brain to CTE research, I'm screwed, whatever. That would have been tragic on its own, but it still would have sent a message. Now you guys have told these people that are already suffering from mental illness, hey, don't go out alone in your basement. Go take a bunch of people out with you so we can memorialize you and talk about how you're a hero and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, CEOs aren't people, all this bullshit. The cop that he killed, who was, by the way, a Bangladeshi Muslim immigrant that got killed, was a person. The lady he shot that was an executive at Blackstone, who I'm not a big fan of as a company, was a person. They had children, they had spouses. Everyone he killed was a human. Now, from the political perspective, this does have implications because it happened in New York City where you've got a guy named Zohran Mamdani who's running, who has tweets where he talks about how we need to abolish the police. He has a tweet where he said during the George Floyd riots that he walked past a cop crying in his car and laughed about it because he thought it was funny and he wants to see the police suffer. That guy's going to have to do some serious PR work for these tweets that are circulating. He's going to have to do a hard 180, and we're like 4 months from the election, 3 months from the election over there, so he may survive this because it's so far off, but this could kneecap his campaign because you got a dead cop from a nutcase that took an AR-15, into a building and shot a bunch of executives. And you got a guy who's the lead candidate for mayor talking about how he basically gets off on seeing police officers suffer. That's some serious PR work they got to do. And if Andrew Cuomo and Eric Adams and all these guys that are running, if their campaign teams are worth half a damn, they will hit him on this over and over and over again between now until Election Day. This can't bode well for a guy who's on the record saying he wants to abolish the police. You know, because in Zohran Mamdani's world, you'd send a social worker to deal with this lunatic that's killing people. That's what these idiots say. They want to send a social worker. And believe me, I don't think there's certain situations where police probably aren't the ones to deal with it, right? And they get forced into this and they have to put on 16 different hats where they go from cop to counselor to EMT, all this stuff, right? There's probably some situations where police officers aren't the best ones to handle it. A mass shooting is objectively a job for an armed police officer. If you've got someone who has opened fire on people and is killing indiscriminately, the time to reason with that person was about 6 months ago. That's out the window. That guy has to go down. Whether he puts his hands up and surrenders himself or he points the gun at the police and goes out suicide by cop, that guy has to go down. Zohran Mamdani doesn't want that. This could be his Kamala Harris transgender surgery for illegal immigrants in prison moment. Okay, let's go to the next one. So we brought in close to $200 billion so far from the tariffs as a country. Now, these are taxes that you and I are paying, mind you, in many cases. But that's the number coming back. So Josh Hawley, the Republican senator from Missouri, who I am not a fan of, I've gone on the record saying he's one of the dumbest people in Congress, and he's further proving my point here. Sorry, I got some crap in my nose. Josh Hawley has come out and he's filed legislation to give a $600 rebate check to Americans as a result of the tariff revenue. So he's going to send every man and woman in the country a check for $600. Have we not learned It's almost like 5 years ago, we didn't send everybody a check and cause prices to go nuts. You know what I'm saying? It's like, yeah, you got your $1,200, from the stimulus checks, and then you got another $6. You got, what was the other one, was like 14 or something. I don't remember what it was. So yeah, you got a little over $3,000 in the span of a year from the government. And then what did you get? You got $7 eggs. You got Applebee's went from 2 people could eat for $25 to you better bring 50 to 60 in there. You got $30 to feed your family at fucking McDonald's now. That's what you got. How many times do we have to learn this lesson? Do we have to burn the whole country down to learn that just printing money and giving people handouts doesn't work? And this is not a left-right issue. Well, it's so-called conservatives shouldn't be on board with this. But there's retards on both sides of the political spectrum that want this. My financial advisor told me that Josh Hawley and the more protectionist MAGA or more protectionist wing of MAGA have become more fiscally progressive than Bernie Sanders. And I agree with him. Bernie Sanders isn't trying to give people free money. Josh Hawley's become the Bernie Sanders of the Republican Party. This guy's an idiot. And somehow some people look at him as a legitimate contender to be president in 3 years. It's nuts. How many times do we have to learn this lesson, guys? Take the money you've made from the tariffs and pay off the debt. The same guy tried to do something like this with the Doge cuts. Take the money you've saved from the cuts and pay off the debt. Don't mortgage our children's future on this. How many times do we have to do this? Let me ask, what would you guys do with $600? What would you do with $600? Yeah, you might pay your credit card off or whatever. That's great. You pay so you pay a credit card off 3 months early. Okay, is that going to be worth the price hikes that come from giving every single person in the country a check for $600? Of course it's not, because what's going to happen is prices are going to skyrocket again. You're going to take that same credit card, run it up, and you're going to be right back in that hole because you can't afford to live because we're dealing with the implications of just printing off money. And the way Congress works, the way these people are slaves to their donors, that this is not going to be a straightforward piece of legislation. If it passed, by the time it got to the president's desk, this would not be a straightforward piece of legislation that just cuts everyone a check for $600. Those corporations aren't going to let us get paid without getting their slice. This would go from, I don't know, let's say the bill is, how many people are there in America? So this would go either way, from a couple $1 billion to a $1.5 trillion spending package that gives all these handouts to corporations and has all this extra pork in it. They're not letting us just get a straight check. That's not happening. So this is like, you see this with people all the time. People do this with their personal finances. Something pops up and, it's $200. They don't have the money, whatever. They put it on their credit card as an emergency. I'll pay it off next month. And they go, well, I've already been spending on the credit card. What's that new pair of shoes? Why not? That new video game I wanted. I'll throw that on. And then it goes from $200 to $1,200. And now you're in a hole. That's what'll happen with this legislation. It'll go from somebody who, while he's an idiot for it, in good faith, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, wanted to give people a little bit of their money back, help them out. And then it's going to turn into this giant corporate spending bill. The $600 that we're getting will be minuscule compared to the amount of spending. Because there's politicians who go, oh, you want to print some money, huh? All right. Let me get some of my donors in there, too. Let me get some of these companies that so I can move some stuff around in the stock market. Let me get them in there, okay? How about that? We'll get them a little bit of help. We'll all make a little. Americans will get their $600 peanut money, and we'll all take a little bit out on the side, a couple $1 million in stocks, right? That's what's going to happen here. That's what's going to happen. Do you know the last time that a bill that had one piece of legislation in it, we're going to do this one thing, made it through both houses and was signed by the president? I don't think it's happened in my lifetime. You can fact check me on that, run it through ChatGPT or whatever. I don't think that's happened in my lifetime. So it's not going to work here. They're going to continue to spend. They're going to continue to print money. They're going to continue to be fiscally irresponsible. And that's what's going to happen. You want to just watch. I'm going to call this right now, and you can come back in a year and tell me I'm wrong. Here's what's going to happen. Donald Trump, before the primaries in 2026, is going to do his version of what Joe Biden did. Do you remember what Biden did before the 2022 midterms? And I told you he was going to do this. He signed an executive order waiving $20,000 worth of student loan debt for everyone in the country with federally held student loans. And I told you when that happened, there's no way this makes it through the Supreme Court. This is not constitutional. It's not going to make it. And of course it didn't. But it didn't get struck down until after the midterms. So what he did was he bought the votes of a whole group of people. Same thing with his bullshit marijuana pardon. He didn't get anyone out of jail. No one's sitting in federal prison on simple possession charges for marijuana. It may have been part of their sentence, but if they're in federal prison, they were sitting there for something much more significant. So yeah, we found 30 illegal firearms in your house, and you happen to have pot. Oh, the marijuana thing's dropped. You're still in prison for the next 40 years, but not for pot, right? The $150 fine you had to pay, we'll put that on your books, all right? Trump's going to do his version of that. Mark my words, September 2026, Donald Trump will do something of this sort. He's going to come out and say, hey, my tariffs have been such a success. We've made so much money off of this. So because we've made so much money and we've generated all this new revenue for the country, instead of paying off the debt, I'm going to sign an executive order giving a check for $500 to every working adult in this country. He'll sign it. Everyone, myself included, will be sitting there on the air going, there's no way this is going to make it through the Supreme Courts. He'll save face for the Republicans in the midterms. And then the Supreme Court will go, yeah, no, that's not happening. It'll get held up and nothing will happen. He's going to do his version of what Biden did. Mark my words, and I'm not anti-Trump. I'm not. I just defended him in the last 2 segments ago. I'm not anti-Trump. But I guarantee you this, but I am anti-fiscal irresponsibility. And I don't care what letter is next to the person's name that's trying to do it. I'm going to call a spade a spade. I'm going to call stupid policies out for what they are, regardless of which side is pushing it. Because this is a stupid policy. This will continue to mortgage our children's future. This will continue to not only fuck our kids over, this is going to fuck us over within the next year or two. Because we're the ones that are going to have to pay for this inflation. All right, we got a couple more. Who's calling me now? Should I answer this call on the air? Let's answer the call on the air. Fuck it. Hello?
Hello.
Hello? Who is this?
Hi, this is Simon. How are you doing today?
Simon. Simon says. I'm doing good. How are you, Simon?
I'm good. Thanks for asking. Sir, the reason for the call we are just reaching, so the homeowner to offering them free of cost estimate. Are you the homeowner?
Oh, I'm sorry, man. My house burned down yesterday. My ex-girlfriend threw a Molotov cocktail through the window, killed my entire family. Are you laughing at my misfortune, Simon?
No, sir. Who is your girlfriend?
My ex-girlfriend. Simon, do you know you just called into a live radio show and you're on the air as we speak? Oh, your scam's going to be famous, dumbass. The longer I keep you on the line, the less time you have to rip off the elderly and mentally incapacitated. How's your day going? Oh, he hung up on me. Simon hung up on me. That was a good time. That was a good segue into our next segment. Oh! He hung up quick when he knew he was on the air, didn't he? Okay, I've always wanted a scammer to call me when I'm on air. It's never happened until I get fucking 40 calls a day from these idiots, but they always know when I'm on air and they never call me. He was calling my homeowners, a free homeowners insurance quote, sure. All right, okay, let's go to the next one here. Joey Swoll is a fitness influencer who's popular on Twitter and TikTok and I think YouTube, and he's on all the shit, right? By the way, follow us on Facebook. That's Space with Caleb Salvatore. Join the Facebook group of the same name where we get a little bit spicier because we don't have to worry about the rules quite as much. Joey Swoll, though, is an influencer on TikTok, and I think he's done a lot of good. He is the guy you see. He's the jacked guy. You'll see a woman posting a video about this guy's creeping on me at the gym, and all the guy's doing is like glanced over in the general direction. He's not saying anything. He's not staring at her, nothing. whatever. And you'll see all types. He calls people out for acting like fools at the gym all the time. And he's doing a public service because what you've seen since this guy started doing this is a sharp decline in the amount of people trying to sabotage others at the gym for online clout because they never know when they're going to get Joey Swoll. So he's been a net positive for society. Well, Joey Swoll posted a video on Twitter after Hulk Hogan died, where he's lifting weights dressed as Hulk Hogan. He said, Hulk Hogan's one of the people that got me into physical fitness, rest in peace. And we covered this last week, but the mob came for this guy's throat. They came for his throat. Hulk Hogan was a racist. How dare you? You're a white supremacist. Blah, 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 blah. And Joey Swoll made a critical error. Joey Swoll apologized, which is something you can never do. Now, if you genuinely screw up, if you do something bad, you say something that is, objectively racist and it was just mean-spirited and an evil thing to say or do, yes, you should apologize for it. But something benign like dressing up as Hulk Hogan, what have I told you guys? The second you apologize to the mob, they are like sharks in the fucking water. They smell blood, and they're never going to stop coming for you. So Joey Swoll made an apology, and I'll play the video for you.
I owe my followers, my community, and all of social media an apology. A few days ago, I reposted an old video of me in the gym wearing a Hulk Hogan Halloween costume on the day that he passed. Last night in my live stream, a lot of people expressed how upset and frustrated they were with me that I had posted that. Instead of listening and understanding like I should have, I became defensive and said that I was posting to celebrate the wrestling icon, the person that so many of us looked up to as kids that we grew up with, that made us.
This is his first mistake. His first mistake. Not only do you not owe these whack jobs an apology, you don't owe them an explanation. Because that's the first mistake there. Any explanation you give them will never be good enough. Never. Nor will any apology, as you're about to find out here.
Tear our shirts and take our vitamins and say our prayers. I didn't know to the extent of all the horrible things that he had done. Since last night, I have done a lot of research, talked to a few people, and learned all of the horrible, horrible things that man has done, which is way more than just making a mistake and being human. So because of that, I have taken the videos down, and I apologize to anybody that I offended. I am sorry. Also, during last night's live stream, I used the word colored instead of saying person of color, which is a very outdated, very offensive term. A few moments later, somebody educated me and told me that it wasn't okay to use that, which I immediately apologized to everyone and said I would never do that again. So once again, to anybody that I offended, I am sorry. My whole page, my whole brand is based on holding people accountable and doing better. I would be a hypocrite if I didn't hold myself to the same standards. I am human. I am still growing. I am still learning. And I promise all of you, I will do better. I have nothing but love and kindness in my heart. I will continue to try to make the world a better place. And once again, to everybody, I apologize.
So there's his first mistake, was apologizing to these people. Now, he also apologized on his Facebook or Instagram, whatever, live. And that's where he said the word colored people instead of people of color, which, listen, dude, I'm on the air for hours every week. Sometimes, and you guys hear this, no matter how much practice you have, when you're talking quickly and you're trying to get a million different points out, sometimes words get minced. It's not like he used a slur. He switched two words around. He said colored people rather than people of color. That happens. I've gone back and listened to things I've said where I clearly misstated something. I misstated a fact. I said the wrong name. I said the wrong word, whatever. And it is what it is. That's what happens when you're on the air and you don't have the opportunity to go back and edit everything that was said to make it sound perfectly. People make mistakes when they're speaking. That's called being human. I'm going to guarantee you These dumbasses that are crucifying him have no public speaking skills. These are the people that get fucking anxiety ordering food at restaurants. I guarantee you they don't have the public speaking skills. But where he went wrong was apologizing in the first place. And that apology wasn't sincere enough for the short bus brigade and the woke mob. So here's what he said next. Posted this to Instagram. And I quote, "All the good I've done, all the people I've helped, all for nothing. When I need help, when I need kindness and empathy, nothing. I truly hope all the people I've inspired to do great things in their life and pay it forward to help others and carry on my message. But no matter how much good you do, no matter how many people you help, they just wait for a reason to hate you and tear you down. It's true, you either die a hero or live long enough to be the villain. Thank you for the support. Please remember me and smile. I love you all. I am done." Now that's a little emotional. That's a little emotional. What have I told you guys? What have I told you? You can't read the comments. Post and ghost. I have someone who reads the comments for me. You post and ghost. You do not. You have to keep in mind the type of people you are interacting with. These are anonymous losers on the internet. How many successful people do you know that behave this way? That you respect? Maybe there are some, but they wouldn't behave that way to you in person. Believe me, these people that talk all this shit on Reddit and Twitter or whatever, 99% of them aren't that confrontational in person. Most of them, like I said, get anxiety, talking on the phone with a customer service rep when they're trying to get their computer fixed. These are losers that are coming at you. Why do you care what these unemployed dirtbags think about you at all? Why do you care what this guy who probably smells like a combination of body odor and weed, typing away from his parents' basement that he hasn't come up out of for the last 3 days other than to get pizza rolls that his mom made him? Why do you care about that guy's opinion of you? Why would you ever apologize to him? Why? You didn't do anything wrong. You dressed as Hulk Hogan and honored a dead guy who, yes, fucked up 18 years ago, apologized for his mistake, found Christ, and got baptized. Everyone's entitled to redemption, even racists. Why would you let that roll? Why would you care? Engaging them in the first place was the problem. There's a radio station here that won't be named, but you all probably know who I'm talking about. And I've criticized them publicly when they fired my boss years ago. When I say that they are very clear, in my opinion, what it looks like to me is they are willing to sacrifice their brand as the show has become more and more boring throughout the years. They are willing to sacrifice their brand in order to appease a group of people that don't listen to them in the first place, just to keep that group of people quiet. The cancel mob are the folks that were on board with everybody doxing people at the gym and trying to make men look like perverts that were just asking if you were almost done on the bench press and things like that. Those are the people that were on board with that. Those people were not Joey Swoll's target audience. When the leftist idiots get mad at me and tell me my show's it's a joke and all this stuff like that, and it's boring, I don't care. If someone on my side of the aisle said, "Hey, I don't like your show," that would be different because they're my target demographic. My target demographic is not the group of people that thinks Walmart not having 73 different types of bathrooms is some form of oppression. I don't care if they don't like my show. It's not for them. Do you think the Call Her Daddy podcast cares that men don't like their show and find it boring? Of course not. We're not their target demographic. The cancel mob is not Joey Swoll's target demographic. Why on earth does he care what they think of him? And why on earth? Because he has done good. This is a speed bump. This hold is it could have been avoided. He could have played it better. He didn't. It is what it is. He's got to play with the. He's got to dig himself out of the hole he's in. Why on earth would you let these people destroy you that don't even enjoy the type of shit you post? It makes no sense to me. So we got one more. We're going to get out of here. It's a local piece of news. There's a guy who's a part of a group in Nebraska. called Red State, Nebraska. His name's Justin Herring. And Red State, Nebraska, I differ from politically. They are a establishment, Don Bacon type Republican group. Not a fan. This guy's appeared in ads with Bacon, with Fisher. There's pictures of them all over the internet. All over the internet. I think he's got a couple pictures with Pillin. The list goes on and on. Well, he got arrested a while back for felon in possession of firearms. He just got sentenced to 3 years in prison. I guess what happened was they went into this guy's house and he had a separate room. This is the police report. I wasn't there. But he had a separate room off in the house that was separated by drywall. He had built around it. There were no doors getting into it. Wife told him, obviously wasn't a ride or die. They busted it down, took all the weapons out. And he got charged for felon in possession of a firearm, which is stupid. Now, this guy, the amount of guns he had and everything they found should have been 30, 40 years in prison. He's going to get 3. The speculation here is who made a phone call. What type of connections to the establishment that this guy has got him out of here. I don't know anything. I wasn't at the court proceedings. I don't know the intricate details. I just want to know how he got off. The other thing I want to know is, political differences aside, this guy belongs to a wing of the Republican Party that is admittedly not a big fan of me. But don't worry, the feeling's mutual. All that aside, when you look at, and I could be wrong here because it's very vague on the details, he was in March of 2000. His felony was that he was an accessory to assault. Did 6 months in prison for it. I'm sorry, folks. Differences aside, don't you think it's a little absurd that this guy gets involved in a bar fight with his buddy 25 years ago, nobody dies, and he just can't defend himself for the rest of his life? Don't you think there should be some type of reform to the gun laws in this country? I'm not saying that I want convicted felons walking around with guns. If you robbed a liquor store, any type of crime with a gun, right? If you robbed a liquor store, if you murdered somebody with anything, if you're a domestic abuser, if you're a pedophile or a rapist, obviously in the interest of public safety, we don't want you walking around with a gun. But don't you think that the punishment after you get out of jail and the rights we revoke should be in the interest of public safety after you've served your time and not punishment? The punishment was you serving your time. Shouldn't the rights, and I think felons should be able to vote, but shouldn't the rights that we revoke from you be after you get out of prison? Like sex offenders can't live within 100 or 1,000 feet of a school and all that stuff like that. That's in the interest of public safety. That makes sense. Shouldn't they all be in the interest of public safety? Not how do we continue to punish this guy after he served his time? I mean, if there was some type of indication that he was crazy or he was going to reoffend, okay, then I can see that. But just as a blanket statement, any felony, you can't ever own a gun, that's a little crazy to me. If a guy's a white-collar criminal who embezzles money from his company and goes away on a felony, I don't think that guy shouldn't be allowed to ever defend himself again. If you're insider trading, I don't think you should be allowed to never defend yourself again. The punishment was you went to jail and nobody's ever going to fucking hire you again. There's the punishment. Your career's over. Why should you're not a violent person by any indication we have. You're not an active threat to the physical well-being of those around you. Why should you lose your guns? I think that's the bigger issue at play here. But that's been our show. Ponder on that for a little bit. I get a little controversial. I go off the mainstream for some conservative takes there. Sometimes we do that. It keeps people coming back because you're not getting the same recycled talking points that you get on the Daily Wire every day. And I'm a little bit more profane and loose with it, and we have a good time. Anyway, that's been our show. See you tomorrow. Unsolicited advice. Mia's back. Cheat on your taxes, not your spouse, and stay back.